Welcome to Dadograms. I'm Jason, I'm Garrett, and I created Dadograms to help you win in life. Now I've got to tell you, the last few Dadograms have been heavier than usual, and this one is by far the heaviest of all. I just have to say what I'm thinking in this set before I move on to a different set of thoughts and ideas next week. Sometimes considering things from different angles can help us understand the truth of the situation, and that's what I feel I need to do here. It's been said that we're in the middle of something called the fourth turning, where events cause great change every 80 to 100 years. Think 1860s, the Civil War, as a fourth turning. Then about 80 years later, the Great Depression or World War II as a great turning. And now, whatever we're going through right now is again a fourth turning about 80 years later. And that has more and more people whispering about civil war here in America now. Now, honestly, the first time I ever heard this, I thought, man, oh hell, that is crazy talk. I pictured what you probably do. Neighbors fighting neighbors with rifles in the woods, cannons, bloody battlefields, like something out of a history book or a movie. But then I stopped to think about it and realized a modern civil war wouldn't look like that at all. It would probably look closely like what we're seeing around us right now. Now, in the 1800s, war was fought with rifles and bayonets, but today we live in a world with satellites, drones, UAVs, thermal imaging, and surveillance cameras on every street corner. You can't hide armies in the woods. You can't sustain that kind of fight without being found and stopped almost instantly. Believe me, I know. 28 years as a Navy pilot, I know. So, no, if America ever collapses into conflict, it won't look like Gettysburg. It will be fought in a very different way. And that's where things get very frightening, because just like I said, we may very well already be in a civil war. Why? Well, I've come up with various reasons why I think this might be the case. First, consider how our institutions have been used as weapons. Laws, courts, and government agencies aren't just referees anymore. They're being twisted for partisan advantage. We see law enforcement agencies like ICE and others operating under the guise of protecting us, while growing their domestic footprint and recruiting efforts that sometimes feel more about internal enforcement than foreign defense. Then there's our culture under siege, the battles in our schools, on our screens, and in our feeds. It becomes more insightful every single year. Today, traditional media, social media platforms like X, True Social, Hollywood, even classrooms, instead of building shared culture, they pit neighbor against neighbor, often with huge distortions of the truth. In this age of AI, most people have no idea what they're seeing is real or fake, and every disagreement is amplified into a battle. Third, economics have been weaponized. Look at who pays, who benefits, and who controls resources. Economic policy isn't just about growth anymore. It's become a tool to squeeze the middle class, throttle small businesses, and reward the politically connected. Tax codes, regulations, bailouts, and subsidies are now being used to shape behavior and loyalty. When power controls the purse strings, it doesn't need to control the people. It simply prices them out of freedom. And while this isn't entirely new, after all, America has always wrestled with influence and wealth, lately it feels different. The middle class, once the backbone of this nation, is being hollowed out from within. And that's no accident. And fourth, the growing movement to have military involvement here at home. And this one, for me at least, seems to be the most dangerous. When National Guard troops are ordered into American cities, it skirts dangerously close to posse comitatus, that long-standing principle that federal forces don't police our own people. Once that line is blurred, it's awfully hard to unblur it. It's like that old boiling frog analogy. Throw a frog into boiling water and he'll jump right out. But if you put him in cold water and then slowly heat it up over time, he'll cook to death before he even realizes it's too late. That's my fear for us. And now, recently, the Secretary of Defense called every flag and general officer for a meeting in Quantico. And while yes, it's his prerogative to recalibrate our leadership, the most frightening part was when the president stepped in and said it was time for our military units to begin joint readiness training inside of some of America's most dangerous cities to prepare troops for potential urban unrest scenarios. That's a frightening idea, because the moment our military starts treating our own streets as training grounds for conflict, we're inching toward something our founders never intended. The president controlling our own military against our own people. Now that's heating up the water. If he does that, considering how vindictive he's been to anyone who crosses him, it won't be long before our military is rounding up anybody who isn't on his side. And by then, the water's boiling, and our great nation is being cooked alive like the frog I mentioned earlier. Now, I mentioned the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 a moment ago. It was created to keep the U.S. military from being used against our own citizens. It's one of the great safeguards of our democracy, a wall between civilian law enforcement and military power. We do it because our founders understood that once a government turns its army inward, freedom doesn't last long. And it's wrong, flat out wrong, for any leader to blur that line. For those of you who have served, you know the oath, but I fear too many of you just say it without truly stopping to think about what it is you're actually swearing to. Our oath isn't to protect leaders, it's to defend the Constitution. And here's where I want to be crystal clear. If a president ever ordered the military to police American citizens, that would violate the spirit of the Constitution, even if it wasn't written in black and white. The Posse Comitatus Act was Congress's way of enforcing the Constitution's separation between civilian and military power. The founders were terrified of standing armies being used against our own people. That's why they gave Congress, not the president, the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the United States and suppress insurrections. That's Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. So yes, an order like that would absolutely cross the line of what our Constitution was built to prevent. And this is important because your oath and mine don't bind us to blind obedience. They bind us to lawful obedience. Every officer enlisted swear the same thing: to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 92, we are required to obey only lawful orders. The law is clear. If an order violates the Constitution or federal law, it's unlawful. Period. That principle isn't just theory, it's been tested, from Nuremberg to modern U.S. military courts. I was just following orders is not a defense when the order itself is unlawful. And yes, that principle applies right here in America. Now, let me say this. I'm not a judge advocate general. I'm not a JAG. I'm not a lawyer. But it is your personal responsibility to understand the oath that you are swearing and what it means. If you're still serving and you've got questions about where the line is, go talk to a JAG. That's what they're there for. The point is simple. Never surrender your conscience or the Constitution to a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. Here's the reminder I wish every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman, and Guardian would remember. Your oath is not to a person, it's not to a party, it's not even to the president. It's to the Constitution of the United States. Yes, we follow the lawful orders of the Commander-in-Chief, but if those orders ever tear the Constitution in half, the oath is clear. The Constitution comes first. And that oath doesn't expire when you retire, at least not in spirit. You may hang up the uniform, but the duty to defend what it stands for never goes away. So let me ask you this hard question. What would you do if one day a president, any president, announced that there would be no more elections, that they were staying in power indefinitely? Sounds like a far-fetched movie plot, right? But slow conditioning always does, as the water slowly gets warmer and warmer until one day it isn't fiction anymore, and the New Age Civil War is over before a single kinetic shot was ever fired. Now, I don't speak about any of this lightly. Speaking out like this isn't comfortable for me at all. For nearly 3 decades in uniform, I wasn't even allowed to do such things. But I'm retired now, and when I see dangerous trends, I can't stay quiet. I know it risks sounding alarmist. I know it may even hurt my reputation. But I love this country too much, and I take my oath too seriously to stay silent. So hear me clearly. A real civil war may not look like muskets and bayonets. It may look like institutions twisted, freedoms eroded, and the Constitution ignored by leadership and by those too blind to see what is happening. I'm Jason M. Garrett, and this is your Dadogram. And if you're curious about the oath that we take when we serve in the military, here they are back to back for your consideration. Thank you.